Hello and welcome to episode 1 of my new series here on Raise the Trident called Mariner's Rundown. Now, this is going to be, or at least the first 3 episodes are going to be a lot different than what the show is going to look like going forward. Normally, this is going to be a weekly thing in the regular season where we're going over, series recaps and previews and any news discussion and a couple other segments that I'm still working on, trying to figure out what those are going to be. This is going to be a lot different. These first 3 episodes are going to be a comprehensive season preview for 2025. So this first episode, we're going to be going through every player that's on the offense or potentially going to be on the offense. Not going to go into like all the people in AAA and whatnot that due to injury could be on the roster. We're talking about kind of your usual suspects here. And we're going to go over all of like what's going on with them individually going into 2025. And then next episode is going to be about the pitching staff. So we're going to go over the rotation and the bullpen. And then third and last episode is simply going to be about not only our division opponents, what's going on with them, and then just some keys for the season. What we can be looking out for us to have a successful season and hopefully be playing some October baseball. But today, like I said, we're going to be starting out with the offense. Before I get into that, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple One, I appreciate you. You can follow the show. You can also leave a rating as well. That would help me out a lot. If you're listening on YouTube, also appreciate you too. Don't appreciate one more than the other. So you can also subscribe to the channel. It's free. It helps me out a lot. You can also become a member on the channel as well for some exclusive content. Only cost you a couple bucks a month, and I would appreciate that a whole lot as well. But with that said, I appreciate appreciate everyone who is listening to this right now. And yeah, we're going to get into it. So going over the offense. I'm going to do this in the order of how all the positions are numbered on the field, on the diamond. So we are going to start at our first position, or the number 1 on the diamond, which is, the number 1 is technically the pitcher. So we're going to start with the number 2, which is the catcher. And pretty clearly, we all know who this is going to be right now. And once again, I'm recording this on Tuesday the 18th. So if this comes out and something has occurred, like an injury or something like that, that I was not aware of during the time of this recording, I apologize. But things change. But as of the 18th, this is what we're looking at. So starting with the 2, we got Cal Raleigh. He's entering his 5th year in the bigs, his 4th full year. He is fresh off of a Platinum Glove winning season. Congratulations to him. Cannot wait to see him presented with that award at opening day. I will be there. If you see me, say hi. I would appreciate that a lot. I've said a lot of appreciations, but seriously, it would be mean a lot. So with Raleigh back in the command of one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, hopefully he's going to be cementing his name as one of the best catchers in the game. He's still continually pretty underrated. He's starting to get more and more national media attention for sure, but a lot of those, the national media goes to guys like Will Smith or JT Realmuto. I think Cal Raleigh's finally starting to get the attention he deserves, that he is the best catcher in the major leagues right now. I truly believe that. Defensively, offensively, he's great. So although 2024 wasn't Raleigh's best offensive year by WRC plus standards, which if you don't know what WRC plus is weighted runs created plus. Anything above 100 is above league average. Right at 100 is league average, and anything below that is a league average bat. And I don't know how it's calculated for sure. I'm an idiot, so I can't get into that too much, but I'm going to be referencing WRC plus quite a bit in this episode. So that is what it means. Basically just means how good of a bat you are compared to the rest of the league. So although 2024 wasn't Raleigh's best offensive year by WRC plus standards, he continued to show that he has an increase in his power. He slugged 34 home runs, which not only led the team, but also all major league catchers. The hope for 2025 for Raleigh would be 2 things: health and strikeout rate. Now, it is no secret that Cal Raleigh has been beat up quite a bit in the last couple years. Specifically, he's been catching more innings than any other catcher in the game as well. He's been getting fewer off days. A lot of that has been a depth issue. You had Sebi Savala behind him. You don't want to give him a whole lot of innings. Garver last year was struggling at the plate, so it was hard to put him in the lineup. We ended up doing that eventually towards the second half of the year at catcher. So it has led to Cal being kind of put out and trotted out on a more regular basis than he probably should be, especially at the catcher position, which has led to him getting beat up quite a bit. We've seen him take so many foul balls off of his thighs, or just general different parts of the body. It seems like the foul balls only go off of parts of the body where he doesn't have his catcher's gear. We've seen him crashing into the nets behind home plate trying to catch foul balls. He plays hard, which is awesome. However, at the most physically demanding position on the field and in baseball at catcher, that has led to him having to deal with some injuries. We also know in 2022, in that playoff run, I believe he was dealing with a torn ligament in his thumb, something with his thumb. It was injured pretty bad. And he's a resilient guy, and you can never put that past him. However, I hope this year is the year where he gets more off days, because that would be huge for him, especially if Garver can be hitting a little bit better. They'll probably be willing to trot him out a little bit more often at the catcher position. So hopefully Cal gets a bit more days off at this point. And the second thing would be his strikeout rate. It would be nice to see if he can improve on that a little bit this year. His strikeout percentage last year was 28%, which was second worst in qualified catchers. So it would be cool to see a little bit of improvement on that. We know that Cal isn't some batting average guy. He's a power guy. He hits nukes, and that is where he is comfortable at the plate, and that's fine. And there's certainly once again, he's not a bad player just because he has a 220 batting average or something. He is still fine. He was ultimately worth 4 F4. This is his 4th straight season reaching above 4 F4, which, if you don't know what that is, it's Fangraphs wins above replacement. So anything above 2 is a good player, and then the more you get above 2, obviously the better player you are. So he is continually a 4-win player. So he's a great catcher. And I think he's going to continue to be one of the most valuable pieces in this organization. So basically, to sum it up with Cal Raleigh, hopefully more off days, because I would love to see him get off his feet a little bit more often than usual. I think he's still going to be a phenomenal defender, a phenomenal framer, great for the pitching staff, commanding it to continue to be great. And yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more Cal Raleigh bombs this year, which I'm really excited to see. Now, getting into the first base position, which is the 3 on the diamond, I put Luke Raley for this. Now, we don't necessarily know for sure what the Mariners' full plan is for first base at this point, but it seems pretty likely that Luke Raley is going to be getting a pretty decent amount of innings there. He had a pretty good season in 2024. In fact, he was one of the Mariners' best hitters. He led the team in WRC Plus by players who played more than 100 games. And with a crowded outfield, it's likely Raley will see most of his innings this year at first base, which is a position he's played 79 big league games at. So he's not a stranger to playing first base at all. We did see an uptick in power last year. Specifically, he hit 22 home runs, which is the highest of his career. There is one home run that comes to mind against the Phillies in particular, where it hit off the third deck of T-Mobile Park in not even just right field, but not like right above the Hit It Here Cafe, but it was actually more like right center. It was just an absolute nuke. That's why we call him Nuke Raley, baby. I love me some Luke Raley. So hopefully Luke can improve a bit against lefties this year. He is a left-handed bat, so it makes sense that he struggles a bit against the same-handedness pitcher. And he's crushed righties, so he's fine with that, and a bulk of Major League pitching are right-handed, so I think his spot is safe regardless in the lineup. The question will just be, how often will he play first base or an outfield spot? With the 26-man roster for opening day still not being fully figured out yet. We're not completely sure what that's going to look like. However, I still think Luke Raley is going to be a very pivotal piece for this Mariners offense. I didn't mention it yet, but his speed he's deceptively very fast. So he could be a game changer once he gets on base. I mean, he can steal bags, he can cause some havoc if need be. So, I'm really looking forward to another great season from Luke Raley. He's a really likable guy. It makes sense that he's kind of turned into a little bit of a fan favorite on this team, and I'm really excited to see what he does in 2025, taking in, probably a new position for most of his innings. Now moving over to second base. Okay. This one's also a really interesting one with the opening day lineup not figured out yet. However, I'm going to go over Ryan Bliss for this because I do think Ryan Bliss is probably going to get a pretty long leash to start out the season to see how good he ends up being at second base. And I think he probably will be the opening day second baseman. It could be Dylan Moore too, and we will go over Dylan Moore a little bit later, but I'm going to go over for the second base position, Ryan Bliss specifically. Ryan Bliss has been a top prospect since 2021. He started that with the Diamondbacks organization prior to coming to the Mariners in the Paul Sewald deal. He performed very well in Tacoma, so it's probably time to give him a big leash at the major league level. He's not a prospect anymore, so if he's not considered that, I think they need to give him the chance to be a solid big leaguer. The small stature 25-year-old had a solid cup of coffee last year. In 77 games, he hit for a 101 WRC plus, so he was right at league average, which is fine for his first 77 games in the bigs. We will take it. And although spring training numbers need to be considered with the largest grain of salt, he's been crushing the ball thus far. He's hitting for a 142 WRC plus in 25 ABs. Once again, has to take it with a grain of salt. It's spring training. You can't be like, oh, this guy's definitely going to be good, because we had several guys last year who absolutely crushed the ball in spring training and then were pretty mediocre when the season started. So that could happen for Ryan Bliss. Who knows? However, I think Bliss makes a lot of sense for the position. It lets Dylan Moore slot into his super utility role, which he flourishes in a bit more than a starting role. His defense, or Ryan Bliss's defense, isn't exactly Gold Glove caliber, but he does have the agility to track down grounders, turn double plays. I think he'll be fine. And we also have a really good, infielder coach, Perry Hill. So I think he could make Bliss a decent defender as well. Personally, I think Ryan Bliss has a pretty high ceiling, and I'm really excited to see him get his shot in 2025. I think he is a type of player that can kind of just be one of those sneaky weapons that we have, and really looking forward to watching him play this year. Moving on to third base, which I believe is the 5 on the diamond when we're, if we're doing scorecards and whatnot. That's obviously going to Jorge Polanco, who was one of the 2, in quotations, off-season acquisitions the Mariners made. I do use quotes for off-season acquisition because, if you've been following the team close enough, Polanco was a Mariner in 2024, and he was a considerable Mariner in 2024. However, his 2024 season was one of his worst in his long career. He only managed a 92 WRC plus and was only worth 0.3 F-WAR, so not a great season. He also played a below average second base defensively. So if people are wondering what the silver lining is to this signing, re-signing a guy who was a below average bat, signing a guy who was a below average defender, again, we're going to talk about injuries. Now, it's no secret that Polanco was playing through some nagging lower body injuries last season. He's actually been having lower body problems for, I think, the last 3 seasons now at this point. But after the season concluded, he ended up undergoing patellar tendon surgery on his left knee to hopefully take care of one of these long-term issues. So this could be seen as both a silver lining and why are you making this signing type thing? And I understand both sides of this. You could see that as well, this dude underwent knee surgery. He's over 30 years old. Why would you take the chance on that? And I understand that. However, if you want to be the optimistic person, you could say, hey, maybe this takes care of those issues that he was playing through, these nagging issues or injuries that he was playing through last year that hindered his performance. Maybe this is the year where we do see that Jorge Polanco that, the Minnesota Twins had, and if we do have that Jorge Polanco, that's a huge spark for this offense because Jorge Polanco has been a really solid player before. And it's very possible that we could get a solid Jorge Polanco going into 2025. For over a decade-long career, he's mostly been a solid bat. So, it's just one of those things where will the knee injury and having that taken care of be the catalyst for him having a good bounce back season in 2025? Maybe. It also could be part of the problem if he doesn't have that improvement. And with Polanco, he was playing second base last year. They ended up choosing to move him to third base this year. And people might wonder why with that knee surgery. I do think, there could be concerns if people lay down a bunch of bunts to third base side, maybe he'll have trouble fielding those. But a lot of the reason is that third base doesn't require as much range as second base does. They don't need to turn double plays like second base does. So it actually could be a little bit easier on his lower half than second base was. So, I'm excited for another year of Jorge Polanco because I do think that player who was just a solid all-around player for a decade, I think he's still in there. And maybe I'm being too optimistic, which is fine if you feel that way. But yeah, I think Jorge Polanco, if we can get a good version of him, will be a huge boost to this offense. Moving on to shortstop, we have J.P. Crawford, the ordained captain of the squad, will be the shortstop for his 7th season in Seattle. I know I sound like a broken record saying this, but last season was a step back for JP. I've mentioned, Cal had a step back season. I think someone else I'm going to mention had a step back season. Julio, when we get to him, I'll be mentioning that again. But yeah, he just didn't have a great season last year. He had the best season of his career in 2023, posting a 136 WRC plus, 4.9 FWAR, and 19 home runs. Last year, he just could not get any momentum going at all. He ended the season with an 89 WRC plus and only 1.6 FWAR. It didn't help that he underwent 2 IL stints last year, causing him to see 40 games less than his 2023 campaign. So it did just kind of feel like last year, every time that he seemed to be getting going a bit and starting to get that momentum, another injury would pop up and it would just kind of ruin it. So during the offseason, Crawford went back to the Masterminds of Driveline, which is who he went to before the 2023 season. And a lot of fans, jokingly, it's kind of a meme a little bit that, JP went to Driveline and they fixed him, basically. So I don't think it's bad that he went back there to, see if there was some mechanical adjustments that could be made for his swing. And certainly hope that some were made and that we do see a solid JP Crawford year this year. I wouldn't say though, however, this is one place where I'm not optimistic. He doesn't have the track record that like a Jorge Polanco has. Jorge Polanco has over a decade or about a decade long career of a track record of being a solid hitter. JP just simply doesn't have that. 2023 is looking more like the outlier year compared to his other production. Not that he's been a bad player or anything. It's just, I don't necessarily think we should expect another 130 plus WRC plus season. Trust me, it would be phenomenal if he did, but even if he can just be above league average or be kind of in the 110 to 120 range, that would be really great to see from JP. And I'm really excited to see what he ends up doing this year. And hopefully it's a bounce back season from last year. Moving on to left field, we have Randy Arozarena. When he is right, Randy Arozarena can be one of the most impactful bats in the league. After being traded from the place where he made a name for himself, Tampa Bay, Arozarena's rival in Seattle was an odd one. His offensive production was actually pretty good for Seattle. In 54 games he played with us, he posted a 122 WRC plus. However, his general presence just kind of felt a bit awkward. It was whispered kind of around the Seattle media space that Arozarena was struggling a bit with the transition from the trade, having to move from, sunny Florida, which is the closest U.S. state to his home of Cuba, to the absolute farthest he could have possibly went in Seattle. And, he, especially with it being a trade deadline trade, he didn't really have a chance to move his family to Seattle in time. So I think he was staying out of a hotel quite a bit during that time. So hopefully over this off season, he's been able to kind of settle down more in the Seattle area. Things are a little bit more comfortable. He is going to be flanked in the outfield by Julio Rodriguez and Victor Robles, who they all seem to have phenomenal chemistry with each other. So that's going to be really fun to watch. It also didn't help that when he joined the Mariners, they were still trying to throw water out of the sinking boat after giving up a 10-game lead on the division. And I think at the time, too, Julio went down with an injury pretty quick as well. So I think it was just a really not the best timing for Arozarena to get to Seattle. However, 2025 is going to be his first full season here with arbitration, depending on if they decide to pay him. He could be here for a couple years, which I hope so. I would love, I'm really excited to have Randy Arozarena in a Mariners uniform for a whole year. Will he feel more comfortable now? I think so. And I think the outfield being the cast of characters it is, I think he's going to feed off that a bit more, and hopefully we can see that same Randy Arozarena that we were seeing in those 54 games, because ultimately he was hitting pretty well. It was just more of a body language thing. It just kind of felt like he wasn't the happiest guy, is what it felt like. We weren't really seeing that swagger that we usually associate with Randy Arozarena. So it's going to be fantastic to watch him again in a Mariners uniform for a full season. Really looking forward to it. Moving on to center field. I think we all know who I'm about to talk about here. Julio Rodriguez, the face of the franchise, had a bit of a step back season last year, which is odd to say because ultimately it was a 2020 season, 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. So not, bad by any means, but Julio, when we talk about his performance, we have to talk about it a little bit differently than we would with other people. He had a very slow start for the first 3 months of the season, but then he started to heat up in July, and then he would suffer a high ankle sprain due to running into the outfield wall trying to make a catch, and he would miss a couple weeks of games, and then when he did come back, it was in a limited DH role for another couple weeks. So it was very especially a very weird summer for Julio Rodriguez. At the year end, he would have a slash line of 273, 325, 409 for a 116 WRC plus, 20 home runs, 24 stolen bases. He ended up being worth 3.8 FWAR. And now he's entering his age 24 season. I am sure Julio's looking to produce his second 30-30 season in his still very young career. We already know defensively he's a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. Hopefully he actually gets that type of recognition this year. But, we're really looking at his bat for signs of improvement, specifically in consistency. Outside of his rookie year, Julio's been prone to long slumps, with several months last year being a well below league average bat. The hope is that Julio can produce a baseline above league average bat, along with his huge bursts of production. So basically, we need to not have the valleys be so low and the mountains can be as high as they want. I'm not obviously saying that, but we need to reduce how low those valleys go, because sometimes it can be honestly just tough to watch him at the plate when he's going through some of these slumps. So we're going to really hope that consistency comes back, or not comes back. Hopefully we can see that consistency from Julio Rodriguez this year, because I do think ultimately that will help the team a lot more. Comparison, I don't want to see a 75 WRC plus month followed by a 150 WRC plus month. I would prefer to see a 110 WRC plus month and then a 130, I think that would ultimately help the team more if we had that, because if he can be productive more often than not, then I think this team is going to win a lot of games. So and he's going to be flanked by two very charismatic outfielders. We already talked about it with Randy Arozarena, and Victor Robles is going to be on his left side. That offense is going to be so fun to watch, and hey, while we're talking about Victor Robles, let's get into Victor Robles in right field. After being claimed in early June by the Mariners, after being DFA'd by the team he grew up and developed with, the Washington Nationals, Victor Robles came in as a former top prospect looking to find a home. And from June to the end of the season, he became one of the best offensive players in the game. In 77 games with Seattle, Robles slashed .328, .393, .467 for a 154 WRC plus, along with 30 stolen bases. He was putting up video game numbers in his 77 games with Seattle. And unfortunately, Robles' spark wasn't enough to turn around the team's postseason fate, but it did show that the Mariners may have acquired a lightning in a bottle from a simple waiver claim. They ended up agreeing to a 2-year, $9.75 million extension in August, and Robles now has the job security to be even more comfortable in a city that has already embraced him with pretty intense joy. With that said, there are risks with Robles. Victor has only produced 3 above league average bat seasons in his entire career, which is not, he's not a new player. He won a World Series with the Washington Nationals in 2019. So he's been around the block for a little bit now. So there is a real chance that he could turn back into that player that the Nationals DFA'd. Now, I think Victor is one of those players that we're going to have to watch very closely as the season progresses. And I don't believe there should be an expectation at all for him to keep up the 154 WRC plus production we saw last year. That would be absurd. But the question is, how much less will it be? That's the real question, Victor Robles, is if we shouldn't expect for him to produce as much as he did last year, well, how much less should we expect? And we don't know. And that's what's going to be one of the more interesting storylines for this year is, will Victor Robles turn back in to the DFA'd by the Nationals player, or will he show that simply a change of scenery was all he needed? And now that he has a bit of the job security to go along with it, and he can really settle down in Seattle and not feel like he, is every day batting for his career, or every day he needs to perform to keep his job with the Mariners. I'm just curious to see what happens. I love Victor Robles. I think he has the chance to be a really solid player for us. He definitely has good contact skills right now. He has great base running. Obviously, he, once he gets on base, he could steal second. He could steal third as well. We've seen him do it in back-to-back pitches before. So it's just, he's a huge X factor. And if he can play even remotely close to what he did for us last year, that's going to be an insane spark for this offense. So really looking forward to it. Okay, now we're going to move on to our bench pieces. We're going to start with Mitch Garver, who's going to be our backup catcher this year. Mitch Garver had a pretty rough first year of his 2-year deal with the Mariners. He signed in the 2023 offseason as the first multi-year contract given to an offensive player in the Dipoto era. Garver was coming in as a DH who could catch if needed, and when Sebi Savala didn't work out, Garver had to assume some catching duties, and he mainly became George Kirby's main catcher for the second half of the season. A lot of that had to do with Kirby stays in the zone a lot more. He's a little bit easier to catch than some of our other pitchers. On the offensive side, Garver had one of his worst years of his career. He slashed 172, 286, 341 for an 88 WRC plus, which was the third worst in his career thus far. And Garver's struggle drew the ire of the worst portion of Mariners fans, who resorted to sending him death threats due to his production, which we went over a bit last year on my channel, which is really tough. But however, Garver seems like he's wanting to turn a new leaf in 2025, and he wants to show that he can still be an elite hitter. And baseball is a naturally superstitious sport, so although the next point isn't a reliable piece of analysis, it's hard not to mention it. Garver has a thing for odd years. In every odd year since 2019, Garver has posted a WRC plus north of 130. Could 2025, an odd year, see a similar result? Maybe. He's been playing, or he's been hitting very well in spring training thus far. And we've noticed some obvious mechanical changes. It seems like his hands are a little bit lower in his load up. So maybe that's the key. Maybe that'll help him get a bit more contact on the ball. And yeah, Garver has the pop that he, if he gets a solid stroke on the ball, he will be fine. He will hit it out of the ballpark. So open that if we get an odd year Mitch Garver, a 130 WRC plus Mitch Garver, man, that's going to be a huge boost for this offense. Obviously, everyone performing really well is going to be a huge boost for the offense. I keep saying that. But it would also be huge because then you can really justify giving Cal Raleigh more days off, which would be awesome for him. So really rooting for Mitch Garver this year. Moving on, we have Dylan Moore is next. He's entering his 7th season with the club. The super utility man and Gold Glove award winning Dylan Moore will definitely be making the squad for 2025. The big question mark is, what will his role be? Will he be that super utility man, or will he be the main second baseman with Ryan Bliss? We don't necessarily know that yet. But I do think Moore thrives a lot more in the super utility role. He can play every position on the diamond except catcher. He probably could play catcher if you really needed him to. I'm sure he has a mitt for it or a glove for it. But I'm hoping Moore stays in that role, in that super utility role, because it just seems like he ends up favoring that and being a bit more productive that way. Moore's bat was a little bit above league average last year. He hit for a 105 WRC plus with 10 home runs. However, his spring has been off to a very slow start. He is 32 years old. He is in his walk year with the club as well. He will be a free agent in 2026. So I'm sure he's going to be doing everything in his power to maximize his value once he hits free agency. And yeah, I would prefer that we give Bliss a chance at second base and let Moore fill in where he needs to. That usually is a lot better for Moore in his production than when he is like the main starter at a position. And, hey, if you need to slot him in somewhere in a more full-time role because of an injury, then, you have to do what you have to do. But I would prefer to have him be that guy instead of already being the starter somewhere else. So yeah, that's my hope for Dylan Moore. Hopefully he can just be a solid guy, a solid hitter, and be a Gold Glove value, a Gold Glove caliber defender at a bunch of different positions. I think that would be fine for him. So moving on, Donovan Solano. We're going to talk about him next. He is the only totally new player acquisition of the offseason for the 26 man. Obviously, people are, on minor league deals and whatnot. Solano can defensively play first base, second base, and third base. However, he'll most likely be relegated to the corner infield slots along with some DH days. His defense is passable at best. I mean, he can stand places and be okay. However, Solano's strength is a pretty consistently solid bat. He's posted an above average WRC plus in 5 of his last 6 seasons. Solano is mainly a low power but high contact and on base percentage guy. He doesn't have really any handedness matchup concerns. He hits lefties, he hits righties. That part doesn't really matter with Solano, which is a really nice piece to have on the bench. And that's the thing, is Solano should be a bench role player. He is better in that position, and especially with him not having any handedness issues, that is honestly a pretty valuable guy to have on the bench. To be able to come up in any position against any pitcher, handedness, and you can trust that he has a fair shot to change the game's trajectory a little bit. So really looking forward to seeing Donovan Solano in a Mariners uniform. And yeah, I think he's going to be a solid bench role player for us this year. Now moving on. Mitch Haniger. This is going to be an interesting one. Mitch Haniger's days on the Mariners are probably numbered, or at least they should be. The 34-year-old was reacquired last offseason in a trade from the Giants for Robbie Ray, although he came up big in several Although he came up big in several clutch moments last year, Haniger really struggled generally at the plate, and he lost a step defensively too. His slash line was pretty abysmal: 208, 286, 334 for a 85 WRC plus, and he was worth a whopping negative 0.8 F4. So he ended up hurting the team more than he helped it. So yeah, there's really no reason to expect some big improvement this year. He's been pretty clearly trending downward since he left Seattle in 2022. Doesn't really have any defensive value. His bat is declining. Really, the only thing keeping him on the roster is the fact that we owe him $17.75 million this year. Which is crazy how we reacquired him at all, regardless. The Mariners could DFA him and eat all that money, but we all know that the Mariners are probably going to try to extract every last drop of baseball he has left, which probably is not a whole lot. But as of right now, Haniger has been having some back issues, which has seen him miss a pretty decent amount of spring training games. So that could be a sign that his injury luck is reverting back to bad, like really bad. We all know Haniger does not stay healthy very often. So in the next couple of guys I'm going to talk about, the hard part is their role on the roster depends a lot about what the Mariners do with Mitch Haniger come opening day. If they DFA him, then hey, we got some spots left. If they don't, and he's not on the IL, then he's taking up a spot. And maybe they do put him on the injured list to start the year, and that gives some guys some time to kind of give them a good look in April and see if they're worth keeping around or if we should get Haniger back. So yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen with Haniger. He is a big variable right now, a big expensive variable that is a little bit of a headache, but it is what it is. The headaches might be from the chemtrails. I don't know. So next, once again, these last two guys are dependent on what goes on with Haniger. So we're going to start out with Rowdy Tellez. There are two players whose roster spots are up in the air. Rowdy Tellez is one of them. The Mariners signed Tellez to a minor league deal this offseason, so they don't have to put him on the opening day roster. But Tellez has been making some waves this spring. At the time of me writing the script for this, he was hitting for a 136 WRC plus and 3 home runs in spring training, which once again, you have to take spring training numbers with a grain of salt. He's not going to be hitting 136 WRC plus in the season. That's just not going to happen. But he would be a pretty solid lefty power bat to have available to complement Luke Raley. Although Tellez can be very hot and cold at the plate, his lefty power swing might bode well in T-Mobile Park, which is a park that is better for lefty power bats. And him being able to play first base along with DHing opens up some positional flexibility for Luke Raley to hover between first base and the outfield. Tellez is potentially going to be that next Mike Ford type player, just with less strikeouts. I think he usually runs about a 21% strikeout rate, which is not that bad. So as of now, Tellez is the most intriguing candidate to find his way onto the opening day roster. My understanding is that this Sunday, he can ask the Mariners if he is going to make the opening day roster, and then they get 24 hours to respond and tell him yes or no. So interesting to see what they do, because at that point, we may have a bit more news about what they're doing with Mitch Haniger as well. So who really knows what's going to happen? And that's why I have to talk about these guys, because they could be on the opening day roster, and I want to make sure I cover them a little bit. So, and Rowdy Tellez, although this isn't a stat, it would be nice to have some chunky boy representation on the roster. I would really enjoy having another chunky guy on the roster, make me feel a little bit more seen and visible. So with that said, I'm rooting for Rowdy Tellez to make the opening day roster. Hopefully he's in the lineup on opening day and I can see him hit a nuke and I will go absolutely nuts. I am sorry to everyone who would be sitting around me in T-Mobile Park, but I'll be going nuts. So thank you. The last person to talk about this episode is Miles Mastrobuoni. I don't know. It's hard to say his last name, Mastrobuoni. I'm going to say Mastrobuoni, even though I think it's a little bit different. Miles Mastrobuoni. Acquired via trade after being DFA'd by the Chicago Cubs, Miles Mastrobuoni has a chance of making the big league roster, mainly if Haniger is out of the organization or on the IL by then. So I think Mastrobuoni needs Haniger off the roster in some way, shape, or form if he is going to make the opening day roster. He's had a really rough time at the plate in his 3 major league seasons. His highest season WRC plus ending was 73. The highest. was 73, which is 37% less than league average. So not great. The likelihood he'll be a league average bat is pretty minimal. Obviously, if he is, then cool, great. He's been crushing the ball in spring training, which is awesome to see. But once again, you have to take those results with a large asterisk. Mastrobuoni could be helpful in the defensive flexibility department. He can play all infield positions left of first base, so he can play second, third, and shortstop, and he can play the outfield if needed. So he's just kind of that guy. He's not going to hit very well, but he can be kind of a defensive sub in late innings if need be, or he could be a pinch runner too. So that could be possible. I don't think he's super fast or anything like that, but he could maybe fill that role. Who knows? But once again, I do think Mastrobuoni, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time of him because I do think he has a very thin window to making this opening day roster, but it's not impossible. So we'll see. So with that said, I'm not sure what the opening day roster is going to look like because there's some variables that could happen. Obviously, someone could get injured. Hopefully not but before opening day happens. We don't know what's going on with Mitch Haniger, which obviously will change a bit of the complexion of this roster as well. But regardless, we have some really good pieces to look after and to look forward to this season. I know a lot of people don't think that the Mariners offense has anyone really to look forward to this season. Cal Raleigh, Luke Raley, Julio Rodriguez, maybe Ryan Bliss, Randy Rosarena, Victor Robles. A lot of those guys are going to be exciting to watch in general and see how they do. Jorge Polanco and JP Crawford are huge question marks. And then on the bench, Mitch Garver, maybe we do get odd year Mitch Garver. That maybe not. But what if we do? That would be huge. Maybe Dylan Moore has a solid season. Donovan Solano, I'm excited to see how he does. He's just been a consistent bat. He's raked everywhere he goes. Donnie Barrels. And yeah, there's just certain things to be excited for on this offense, even though I know it doesn't seem like it. But the biggest thing for me on this offense is just, can we get as many people as possible, at least around league average? That would be nice because we obviously know that last year was terrible. the on the offensive side last year was excruciating to watch. And it's hard for me to believe that the 2024 offense or that the 2025 offense is going to be as bad as the 2024 offense. I have a hard time believing that. Maybe it does happen. Maybe they end up even being worse. That would, I would struggle with that. But it's possible. Who knows? So with that said, that is the season preview for your offensive side of the Seattle Mariners. I appreciate you. If you've been listening on Spotify or Apple, thank you so much. If you're on YouTube, thank you as well. I appreciate you. If you're on those streaming platforms for the audio only side of these episodes, you can follow the show. You can rate it as well. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You can like the video as well. But yeah, that's going to be it for me. I think in this one, this is the first episode of Mariners Rundown done. Once again, the show is going to look a lot different once we get into the regular season. There will actually be like segments and whatnot. I'm using this as my way of doing kind of a 3-part season preview. So I appreciate you listening. That's going to be it for me in this one, and I will see you in the next.